Far beyond the safe trade routes of the galaxy, a small alien mining colony drifted around a dying red star. The colony was not important to the great empires. It was not rich. It was not powerful. It was only home. Families lived inside its metal walls. Workers dug rare crystals from broken moons. Children watched the red star glow through thick glass windows. Then one day the sky changed. Unknown ships appeared from deep space. Dark shapes with no signals and no warning. They did not speak. They did not ask. They attacked. Energy beams tore through defense stations. Cargo docks exploded in a fire. The colony shields flickered and failed. Inside the command room, Governor Thalek stood frozen. His hands shook as screens filled with damage reports. Ships destroyed. Fighters gone. Outer ring lost. He sent a message to the nearest empire. No answer. He sent another message to the Trade Alliance. No response. The enemy ships moved closer. Thalek made the hardest choice of his life. He opened a galaxy-wide channel. An emergency broadcast. A final call. SOS. Colony under attack. Civilians present. Request immediate assistance. The signal left the colony and traveled into deep space. Many heard it. A patrol fleet from a nearby empire detected the call. Their commander listened in silence. Then he closed the channel. Not our problem, he said. A merchant union station received the message hours later. They marked it as conflict zone. Too risky. A military outpost picked up the weak signal days later. They logged it. No action taken. The SOS grew weaker as time passed. Back at the colony, panic spread. Food supplies burned. Oxygen levels dropped. Medical bays overflowed. The unknown enemy ships surrounded the colony like hunters. Thalek watched another defense tower fall. His voice was tired now. He sent the SOS again. No one is coming, one officer whispered. Thalek did not answer. Far away on a small blue planet called Earth, a deep space listening array floated in silence. Inside a cold underground station, a human communications officer named Daniel Reyes stared at a flickering screen. He almost ignored the weak signal. It was old, broken, distorted, but something in it made him pause. He cleaned the audio, ran filters, boosted the signal. The words became clear. SOS. Colony under attack. Civilians present. Daniel leaned back slowly. He checked the timestamp. The signal was days old. Most species would have ignored it. He did not. He forwarded the message to Earth Central Command. Minutes later, lights turned red across the operations room. Officers gathered around large holographic displays. Admiral Sarah Hayes listened to the replay. The room was silent. One officer spoke. It is outside our territory. Another said, we do not know who the attackers are. The admiral looked at the star map. The signal location glowed softly. Civilians present, she repeated. Then she gave a simple order. Verify fleet readiness. Across Earth, massive hangars opened. Warships powered up. Engines hummed like distant thunder. Deep in orbit, ship after ship came alive. Back at the dying red star, the alien colony prepared for its final hours. The enemy ships charged their weapons for the last strike. Thalek stood in the dark command room. He no longer hoped. Then a sensor officer gasped. Multiple warp signatures detected. Thalek turned slowly. How many ships, he asked. The officer stared at the screen in disbelief. Not one. Not 10. Hundreds. Space itself seemed to tear open as bright flashes filled the system. Huge metallic warships emerged in perfect formation. Their hulls reflected the red light of the dying star. A new signal broadcast across all channels. This is United Earth Fleet. Stand down. The unknown enemy ships hesitated. Inside the colony command room, no one moved. Thalek whispered, who are the humans? In the cold vacuum of space, the human fleet moved forward like a wall of steel. The SOS was not forgotten, and help had finally arrived. The red star burned quietly as two great fleets faced each other in cold space. On one side, the unknown attackers waited in dark silence. On the other side, the human warships formed a perfect wall of steel. Inside, the lead human flagship, Admiral Sarah Hayes, stood on the command deck. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Large holographic screens showed the enemy ships, long black vessels covered in heavy armor, their weapons glowing with dangerous light. "No signals received," a young officer said. "They're locking weapons," another whispered. The Admiral did not move. "Open a wide channel," she ordered. A human signal spread across the system. "You attacked civilians. You ignored surrender. Stand down now." For a few seconds, space felt frozen. Then the enemy fleet answered. Their reply was not words. It was energy. Bright beams shot across space toward the human front line. Inside the alien colony, Governor Thalek watched in fear. He thought the humans would be destroyed in seconds. But the human ships did not panic. Massive shields flashed blue. The enemy beams crashed against them and scattered into light. "Return fire," Admiral Hayes said quietly. Dozens of human ships moved at once. Their cannons charged with deep orange glow. A wave of precise strikes hit the enemy front ships. Not wild, not messy. Every shot calculated. 3 enemy destroyers exploded. Another spun out of control. Inside the attacker flagship, alarm screamed. Their commander stared at the battlefield. These are not traitors, not explorers. These were warriors. Back on the human flagship, reports came fast. Enemy flanking left side. Missiles swarm incoming. Admiral Hayes gave short, clear orders. Split formation. Intercept missiles. Advance second line. Human ships moved like one living machine. Small defense fighters launched from larger carriers. They shot down incoming missiles before they could reach the fleet. The red star light reflected off metal hulls. Fire and debris floated between ships. Inside the alien colony, hope began to rise. "They're pushing them back," an officer said softly. Thalek watched the screen in disbelief. No empire had ever come for them. No fleet had ever risked so much. "Why would humans do this?" he asked. No one had the answer. Out in space, the enemy fleet changed tactics. Their largest battleship moved forward, its hull covered in heavy cannons. A massive weapon began to charge. Dark energy gathered at its core. "Target appears to be the colony," a human sensor officer reported. Admiral Hayes narrowed her eyes. "They want to finish the civilians. All ships focus fire on enemy flagship," she ordered. The human fleet shifted. Every major cannon turned toward the giant enemy vessel. The enemy fired first. A beam of pure destruction shot toward the colony. In that single moment, time felt slow. Human ships accelerated. 3 cruisers moved directly into the path. Their shields burned bright blue. The beam struck. 2 cruisers shattered under the impact. The third held just long enough. The colony survived. Silence filled the human command deck for one heavy second. Then the Admiral spoke. "Fire." Hundreds of human cannons unleashed at once. Missiles streaked across space like falling stars. The enemy flagship shields cracked. Armor plates broke apart. Secondary explosions burst across its surface. Inside the attacker bridge, fear replaced confidence. They tried to retreat. Engines flared. But human destroyers had already moved behind them. "There will be no escape," a human captain said calmly. Another focused volley hit the enemy flagship. Its core overloaded. A blinding flash consumed the giant ship. Shockwaves rolled across the battlefield. When the light faded, the enemy formation was broken. Some ships drifted powerless. Others tried to flee. The human fleet did not chase wildly. They advanced slowly, controlled, unstoppable. Inside, the alien colony, cheers filled the command room. Thalek felt his legs weaken. They were alive, but the battle was not over. Long-range sensors on the human flagship detected something new. Multiple warp signatures forming at the edge of the system. More enemy ships were coming, and this time, they were bigger. At the edge of the Red Star system, space began to bend. New warp signatures opened like deep wounds in the dark. Larger ships emerged slowly, their shapes massive and terrifying, far bigger than the first wave. Inside the human flagship, the command deck grew silent. Sensor officers spoke with a low voice. Multiple capital-class vessels detected, numbers increasing. On the main screen, giant enemy carriers formed a wide circle, their hulls covered in layered armor, their engines glowing with deep purple fire. They did not rush forward. They positioned themselves with calm precision. Admiral Sarah Hayes understood immediately. This was the real fleet. The first attackers had only been scouts. Back inside, the alien colony governor Thalek watched the new arrivals. Hope that had just begun to grow started to shake again. "We cannot survive another wave like this," one officer said. Thalek looked at the human ships, still holding formation. They were smaller in number compared to the new enemy fleet. Yet they did not move back. On the human command deck, a young lieutenant asked quietly, "Should we retreat to defensive orbit?" Admiral Hayes kept her eyes on the display. "Negative. If we retreat, they will target the colony again." Communications officer turned in his chair. Incoming transmission from enemy fleet. A distorted alien face appeared on screen. Cold eyes. No emotion. "You interfere in our harvest," the alien commander said. "Leave now and you may live." No one on the human bridge reacted. Admiral Hayes answered calmly. "You attacked civilians. You ignored surrender. This system is now under human protection." The alien face stared for a moment. Then the screen went dark. Enemy carriers opened their launch bays. Hundreds of smaller attack ships poured into space like a black swarm. "Fighter wings prepare for full deployment," the admiral ordered. Across the human fleet, hangars opened. Sleek human fighters launched in perfect lines. Space between the two fleets filled with fast-moving lights. Back inside the colony, many civilians gathered near observation windows. They could see distant flashes in the sky. A child asked his mother, "Are the humans going to leave?" She did not know how to answer. In space, the first clash began. Enemy fighters moved fast and wild. Human fighters stayed in tight groups, covering each other. Laser fire crossed in every direction. Ships exploded. Debris spun through the void. On the human flagship, damage reports came rapidly. Enemy capital ships charging main weapons. Huge cannons on the enemy carriers began to glow. Admiral Hayes made a fast decision. All heavy cruisers advance. Target carrier engines. Human cruisers broke formation and surged forward. Enemy main guns fired. Massive beams ripped through space. One human cruiser lost shields instantly. Another took direct hull damage. But they kept moving. Missiles launched from human ships in controlled waves. Each missile locked on specific engine sections. Explosions burst along one carrier. Its engines failed. It drifted out of formation. Enemy ships adjusted quickly. They surrounded the advancing cruisers. Inside one damaged human cruiser, Captain Morales gripped his console. Shields at 15%. He looked at his crew. Hold position. They continued firing even as alarms screamed around them. Back on the flagship, Admiral Hayes saw the danger. Redirect third-line destroyers to support cruiser group. New human ships moved into the fight, intercepting enemy vessels. The battle became closer, more brutal. Metal struck metal. Ships collided. Fighters crashed. And still the human fleet did not break. Then something unexpected happened. Long-range sensors detected power spikes deep inside the largest enemy carrier. Analysis officer turned pale. They are preparing system-wide weapon discharge. If fired, it could destroy both fleets and the colony. The bridge fell silent. The enemy was ready to burn everything. Admiral Hayes breathed slowly. Open fleet-wide channel. Her voice spread across every human ship. "This is Admiral Hayes. We end this now. Prepare for direct assault on primary carrier." Human ships began to change formation. Not defensive, not cautious. They formed a spear and aimed straight at the heart of the enemy fleet. The red star burned brighter as both sides prepared for the next move. And this time, there would be no holding back. The human fleet moved as one sharp spear cutting through the burning battlefield. At the front of the formation, the flagship led the charge. Behind it, heavy cruisers and destroyers aligned in perfect lines. Fighters circled above and below like shields of steel. Inside, the alien supercarrier dark energy continued to build. Its core glowed brighter with every passing second. If it fired, the entire system would burn. Admiral Sarah Hayes stood steady on the bridge. Distance to primary carrier closing fast, a tactical officer reported. Enemy vessels moving to intercept. On the main screen, dozens of enemy ships rushed forward to block the human spear. Fire at will, the Admiral ordered. The front line of human ships unleashed a storm of controlled strikes. Rail cannons thundered. Missiles streaked forward. Point defense lasers cleared a path. Enemy ships exploded one after another. But still they came. Inside one human destroyer, a young pilot felt his hands shake. This was closer than any battle before. He could see the enemy hull through his window. Hold formation, his captain commanded. The destroyer pushed forward. Back inside the alien colony, civilians watched the sky filled with light. Every flash could mean victory or destruction. Governor Thalek whispered, "Please hold." In space, the spear formation struck the outer defense ring of the supercarrier. Massive turrets on the carrier opened fire. Heavy beams tore through two human frigates. They vanished in bright fire. For a moment, the spear slowed. Admiral Hayes saw the hesitation. "Do not stop," she said calmly. The human fleet accelerated. 3 cruisers moved ahead of the flagship, their shields flaring bright blue. They absorbed the next wave of heavy fire. One cruiser broke apart. Another drifted powerless. But the path was open. The flagship entered close range. Target reactor shield nodes, the Admiral ordered. Precision strikes hit specific glowing sections along the carrier hull. Inside the alien command center, alarm screamed. Shield layers failing. Outer armor breached. The alien commander growled. "Divert all power to main weapon." The supercarrier core pulsed violently. Analysis officer on the human bridge spoke fast. "Weapon charge at 80%. Time was running out." Admiral Hayes made the final call. "All remaining ships focus everything on that core." Across the battlefield, human vessels shifted aim. No distractions. No side targets. Every cannon, every missile, every rail shot. The void filled with human fire. Explosions rippled across the massive carrier. Armor plates shattered. Secondary blasts erupted, but the core still glowed. Weapon charge at 95%. Inside the colony, Thalek closed his eyes. He thought this was the end. Then from the far side of the battlefield, a damaged human cruiser made a sudden move. Its engines flared brighter than before. "Where's Cruiser Valor going?" a bridge officer asked. Admiral Hayes watched silently. The cruiser accelerated directly toward the supercarrier. "Open channel to Cruiser Valor," she ordered. The face of Captain Morales appeared. His ship was burning behind him. "We are in range," he said. His voice was steady. "For Earth." The channel cut. The cruiser pushed through defensive fire, its hull tearing apart. It reached the weak point already opened by the fleet. Then it detonated. A blinding flash consumed the center of the supercarrier. For one breathless second, everything went white. When vision returned, the massive alien carrier was split in two. Its core collapsed inward, then exploded outward in silent fire. Shock waves rolled across space. Remaining enemy ships froze. Their command structure was gone. The human fleet slowed, weapons ready but silent. Back inside the colony, cheers and tears filled every room. Thalek stared at the broken pieces of the supercarrier drifting in space. The system-wide weapon would never fire, but the battle was not fully over. Long-range sensors on the human flagship detected something unexpected, a transmission spreading beyond the system. The enemy had called for something else, something even greater, and it was already on its way. The battlefield was filled with drifting fire and broken metal. Pieces of the supercarrier floated around the Red Star like silent ghosts. Human ships regrouped slowly. Damaged vessels pulled back. Fighters returned to carriers. Inside the flagship, Admiral Sarah Hayes did not celebrate. "What is that transmission?" she asked. A communications officer answered. Encrypted long-range burst signal. Destination unknown. Another officer added. Source was not only the carrier. It came from deeper space. The bridge grew quiet. Then sensors detected it. A massive distortion far beyond the outer edge of the system. Not like normal warp signatures. This was larger, slower, heavier. Visuals came online. Something enormous was arriving. Back inside, the alien colony, Governor Thalek felt the change in the atmosphere. Even without understanding human systems, he could see the tension. Are the attackers leaving, he asked. No one answered. In space, the distortion widened. Space itself bent inward as if pulled by unseen gravity. From the darkness, a shape appeared. It was not a carrier, not a battleship. It was a fortress, a single structure larger than anything in the system. Its surface covered in layered black armor. Thousands of weapons visible across its hull. Inside the human flagship, someone whispered, "That is not a ship." Analysis teams worked fast. Energy readings are extreme. Weapon systems unknown. Shield strength off scale. The alien fortress stopped at the edge of the battlefield. It did not rush. It did not panic. A deep signal spread across every channel. You have destroyed our harvest fleet. Now you face judgment. Admiral Hayes listened without emotion. All ships defensive pattern Delta, she ordered. Human vessels formed a wide circular shield around the alien colony. Damaged ships stayed protected inside. Heavy cruisers moved to the front. The alien fortress began to power up. Huge energy lines lit across its surface, glowing red like cracks in a volcano. Inside the colony, civilians watched in fear again. Hope faded. Thalek looked toward the human fleet. They were still there, still standing between the fortress and the colony. On the human bridge, a young officer asked quietly, "Can we win against that?" Admiral Hayes did not answer immediately. She studied the enemy structure, looking for weakness. Then the fortress fired. Not one beam, not dozens, thousands. A storm of red energy flooded toward the human formation. Human shields flared bright blue. Some ships vanished instantly. Others held for seconds before collapsing. Reports screamed across the bridge. Multiple hull losses. Shield failure on outer ring. Hold formation, the admiral commanded. Human ships tightened their circle. Destroyers moved forward to replace fallen vessels. Return fire. Every remaining human cannon opened up. Missiles struck the fortress surface. Rail shots hammered against its armor. Small explosions appeared, but they were like sparks against a mountain. The fortress continued its advance. Distance closing fast. If it reached firing range of the colony, nothing would survive. Inside the flagship, silence fell for one heavy moment. Then the sensor officer spoke, detecting internal energy build up. Central core charging. It was preparing a final strike. Admiral Hayes understood. If that weapon fired the colony, and much of her fleet would be gone. She turned to her tactical team. Is there any weakness? One analyst zoomed into a section beneath the fortress. There, venting ports along lower structure. They opened briefly during power cycle. Small target window. The admiral nodded. Prepare all remaining strike craft. Fighters launched again. Even damaged pilots returned to their seats. Across the fleet, one message spread. Final assault. Human fighters formed tight groups, flying low under the fortress hull, avoiding heavy guns. The red star light flickered across the giant enemy structure. The vent ports began to open, just for seconds. Human pilots pushed their engines beyond safe limits. Missiles locked, coordinates set. Inside the fortress, alarms triggered. Defense guns turned downward. Space filled with fire. And still the human fighters kept diving. Because if they failed, everything would end. And this time, there would be no second chance. Human fighters rushed beneath the massive alien fortress. The vent ports along its lower hull opened like glowing wounds. Bright energy pulsed from deep inside. Inside, each small cockpit pilots focused only on the target. There was no fear left, only purpose. Missiles locked onto the open vents. Timers counting down. Enemy defense guns rotated downward. Streams of red fire filled the space below the fortress. One fighter exploded. Another spun away damaged. But the rest did not turn back. "Release payload," squad leader shouted. Dozens of missiles launched at once. They disappeared into the glowing vent openings. For one silent second, nothing happened. Then the fortress shook. Small explosions rippled along its lower hull. Inside, the human flagship officers leaned forward, eyes fixed on the screen. "Did it work?" someone whispered. Sensor readings spiked. Internal core instability detected. The fortress fired again, but this time the beams were uneven, less focused. Admiral Sarah Hayes saw the weakness. "All ships target lower structure. Do not stop firing." Human cruisers and destroyers poured everything they had into the damaged section. Rail cannons struck the same spot again and again. Armor cracked. Layers broke apart. Inside the alien fortress, chaos spread. Their core containment failing. Power systems collapsing. But the structure was still moving. Still dangerous. "Core reaching overload threshold," the human analyst reported. "How long?" the admiral asked. "Seconds." The fortress began to glow from within. Deep red light shining through fractures in its hull. Remaining enemy ships tried to retreat, but the human fleet blocked their escape. Then it happened. The alien fortress core collapsed inward. For a brief heartbeat, the entire battlefield went dark. Then a massive explosion tore through space. A sphere of white light expanded outward, swallowing the broken fortress, consuming nearby debris. Human ships braced as the shockwave struck. Shields flared. Some systems flickered, but the fleet held. When the light faded, nothing remained of the alien fortress. Only drifting fragments and silent space. No more enemy transmissions. No more hostile signals. Inside, the alien colony, silence filled every corridor. Governor Thalek slowly realized they had survived. Cheers erupted. Tears fell. Families embraced. Far above them, the human fleet remained in position. Damaged, but unbroken. On the flagship, Admiral Hayes finally allowed herself to breathe. "Status report," she asked. "Enemy forces destroyed. No further warp signatures detected. Colony secure." She nodded once. "Send medical teams to the colony. Assist with repairs." One officer asked, "Should we claim the system?" The admiral shook her head. "We were never here for territory." A channel opened between the colony and the human fleet. Governor Thalek appeared on screen, his voice filled with emotion. "Why did you come?" Admiral Hayes answered simply, "Because you asked." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, other empires watched the recorded battle. They saw the fleet deployment, the sacrifice, the destruction of the fortress. They had ignored the SOS. Humanity had not. From that day forward, when a distress signal echoed through space, no one dismissed it lightly, because they knew if humans heard it, they would come. And when Deathworlders deploy a fleet, the galaxy changes forever.